course, was Abraham's son. And we are hearing about Isaac's family, and it's always interesting when we hear about other families. So, reading from Genesis chapter 25, verses 19 through 34. Would you please rise if you are able? These are the descendants of Isaac, Abraham's son. Abraham was the father of Isaac, and Isaac was 40 years old when he married Rebekah, daughter of Bethuel the Aramean of Padam Aram, sister of Laban the Aramean. Isaac prayed to the Lord for his wife because she was barren, and the Lord granted his prayer, and his wife Rebekah conceived. The children struggled together within her, and she said, "If it is to be this way, why do I live?" So she went to inquire of the Lord, and the Lord said to her, "Two nations are in your womb, and two peoples born of you shall be divided. The one shall be stronger than the other, the elder shall serve the younger." When her time to give birth was at hand, there were twins in her womb. The first came out red, all his body like a hairy mantle, so they named him Esau. After his brother came out with his hand gripping Esau's heel, so he was named Jacob. Isaac was 60 years old when she bore them. When the boys grew up, Esau was a skillful hunter, a man of the field, while Jacob was a quiet man living in the tents. Isaac loved Esau because he was fond of game, but Rebekah loved Jacob. Once when Jacob was cooking a stew, Esau came in from the field, and he was famished, and Esau said to Jacob, "Let me eat some of that red stuff, for I am famished." Therefore he was called Edom. Jacob said, "First sell me your birthright." Esau said, "I'm about to die. Of what use is a birthright to me?" Jacob said, "Swear to me first." So he swore to him and sold his birthright to Jacob. Then Jacob gave Esau bread and lentil stew, and he ate and drank and rose and went on his way. Thus Esau despised his birthright. You may be seated. Well, this is a wonderful, wonderful story. Maybe when you heard it, you maybe thought of some people you know, or maybe part of your family. I think it's fascinating that once again we have people who are older who are once again having children, and even in the womb, these two boys are fighting. The first one that is born is Esau. He's born first, so therefore he has the birthright. Jacob is holding on to his heel as he comes out. They are obviously not identical twins. They are fraternal. One is hairy, covered with red hair, and the other one is not. So we have these two brothers. They grow up. And Esau is the macho kind of guy. He's outside hunting. He's doing all the really outdoorsy things. And his brother stays at home, it says, in the tent. And what he does is he's learning how to cook. I would guess he was probably a chef. Two totally different personalities. I mean, aren't our families full of that? Where we have two sons or two daughters and they have totally different personalities. Well, that's what it was with Esau and Jacob. Well, the blessing in the Old Testament was very important for people of that time, for the eldest to get a blessing. Now, we don't do that so much anymore, at least like they did it in the Old Testament. A blessing in the Old Testament is really, it's a high honor of encouragement. It certainly has to do with inheritance, who is going to be ruling the family. And often involved in the blessing is also a prediction of the future. Now, we already know that a prediction had already been given before they were even born, that the younger would rule over the older. And actually, when you go to the Old Testament and in the Bible, you'll find out there's a whole history of this. It's not just this time. You've got Abraham, whose first son was Ishmael by Hagar, Sarah's maidservant. That's his firstborn. But then we have Isaac. and so you have Isaac and Ishmael. Isaac's the one who gets the blessing. Then you've got Isaac, who is Esau and Jacob. And of course, Esau would, because he was firstborn, he was the first one out of the womb, even though they were twins, he would be entitled to the birthright. But it's Jacob who gets it. And then if you think about Jesse's sons, there is the last one that is brought forth is David, who becomes king. The youngest of 8 sons is the one who really is the one who is given all the power and all the honor. And of course, he becomes King David. And then we have the story today, we have something that is so simple. We've got 2 brothers. One comes in and he is hungry. He is so famished, he's just sure he's going to die. So he says, give me some of that red stuff. That's the actual word that's used. Stuff. How often do we give up something important to satisfy our immediate desire? He was hungry. He just wanted something in his stomach. He wanted some of that red stuff. Blessings are in different forms today. We don't do things the way that they did back in biblical times. I don't know how many of you, looking out at you, I think some of you would remember the old TV show, The Smothers Brothers. Remember Dickie and Tommy Smothers? And I think it was Dickie who always said, Mom always loved you best. Remember that? That kind of goes on in our homes too. I know when I was growing up, I'd go home, when I became an adult, and I'd go home, and my mother would always talk about my siblings and how wonderful they were, and it kind of ticked me off a little bit, because she didn't say anything nice about me, which I thought she should have. And then, after all, I was in her presence, right? And then I'd say something to my siblings, and if I wasn't there and they were there, she was talking about me. And I thought, why don't you, it was kind of a blessing. So why don't you just, when I'm there, say these things to me? But I've said that to other people, and so I know that my family wasn't the only one that did that. Nowadays, though, what I hear from some people is who inherits the farm. What is the blessed? They are the blessed one. They are the one who is getting the blessing because mom or dad decided that one of the children was going to get the farm. Sometimes it's not a farm or something that you can hold on to, but rather sometimes it's hearing words of affirmation from the parent like, I love you. Now, maybe some of you grew up in a Scandinavian community like I did, but people weren't real generous with using those 3 words, I love you. We were just supposed to know it. You know the story about Ole and Lena. Ole says, Lena says, how come you never tell me you love me? And he said, well, I told you on the day we got married. When I don't, I'll tell you. It's nice to hear somebody say, I'm proud of you. I like being around you. I enjoy you. I love you. We've had a bit of recently in my family, I have 2 sons. One lives out in Seattle. He's been married for 18 years, and he has a wonderful family. He has 2 children, and when they got married many years ago, when they got, my husband and I gave them a dining room table that we had. It was very rock solid, and they got the chairs and everything. And they still have it. And it's been in Philadelphia, it's been out in Oregon, and now it's in Washington. It's a table that my grandkids are growing up with. Our youngest son just got married 2 years ago, and he and his wife just bought a house in Minneapolis. And they are very frugal people, but They don't have much. They're very careful how they spend their money. And they have no furniture. Well, when we lived in the Twin Cities, I found a table at a swap meet, and I bought it and I sanded it down, and it's gorgeous. It's very simple design. I love Scandinavian design. Sanded it down. Turns out it's solid walnut. It's an old banker's table, if that rings any bell for you. And it's even got a brass plate on the side of it. Well, our two boys fell in love with the table, and they both said they wanted it. You see what's coming here, don't you? And so I said, well, when I'm ready to get rid of it, I'll let you know. So our son in Minneapolis, when we went to see their house, I said, you need a dining room table. And I said, would you like the table? Oh, what's Matt going to say? I don't know what he's going to say. He's going to be upset. And I said, don't worry about it. I'll handle it. So a week later, they wanted to think about it. So a week later, I was staying at their house. I was flying out the next morning to go to Seattle. And I said to them, I walked in the door and they said, we want the table. And I said, okay, I will talk to your brother. So I got out to Seattle and I thought, oh, how am I going to say this? You know, how am I going to keep peace? And so we sat down for the meal, first day I'm there, evening meal. And I said to them, I said, I have something I need to tell you. Now, you know, when somebody says something like that, don't you think the worst, right? So anything that follows after that isn't so bad. We all know that. So I said, I have something I need to tell you. And it's, oh, Mom, you're so dramatic. Well, that's not the first time I've heard that. Anyway, I said, you know, Jeremy and Betsy just bought a house. And you know they don't have any furniture. And my oldest son's eyes got about this big. And his cell phone was right next to him. He stopped eating, he grabbed his cell phone, and he texted his brother. And he said, you can't have the table. And his brother texted back right away. And he said, well, Mom said that we can. And then my oldest son texted back and said, well, they're signing the cabin over to us. So this is humor by now. So they're not angry with each other. This has become a joke between them. I was very relieved to have this happen. Well, then they started texting about getting attorneys involved and different things. Now, the reason they want this table is because you said, what my oldest said, he said, Mom, I want it because I grew up with it. But you know what? He didn't. He was off in college out in Montana when I got the table. And the other one was in high school. It's not like it's a table they grew up with. But for some reason, it represented something to them. For them, that would have been the blessing. Whoever gets the table is the one who gets the blessing. So I guess we do have our own ways that we do our blessings. Fortunately, my boys are healthy and they can make a joke out of it. But we know that there are families out there where that's not a possibility. There are families out there where things may not have become humorous. And so I think what's really important for us, you see that table is just stuff. It's just stuff. And there's so much in our life that is just stuff that we fight over. Whether it's in families or if it's friends, whatever, it's only stuff. The real blessing comes from God. The real blessing comes from God through His love. which is shown in the water. It's shown as we share a meal. That's God's blessing. God has blessed us through peace and joy and the power of forgiveness. That's real blessing. And so we say thank you to God. You know, we like to say, oh, so-and-so is blessed, or I've been so blessed. The reality is, it's all just stuff. Blessing comes through relationships. Blessing comes through one another. And it's all by God's good grace and His presence in the world, in our lives, and in our communities of faith. And so we say thank you to God. And that's why we gather for worship. We're here to say thank you to God for loving us, for His grace, as we sang in our opening song. It's all about God's grace and about how He accepts us for who we are. I've always told confirmation kids when they felt like they've been so bad, I say, God doesn't love you any less on your worst day than God loves you on your best day. I think that's a word for all of us to hear too. So we can say with great joy and peace, knowing that God has blessed us by simply being present with us and in our community when we say, this is the day the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and let us be glad in it. Amen. We continue.